What's poppin', mutants? It's me, MT, and welcome back to the Heavy Spoiler Show, y'all. It's time for a breakdown of X2, X-Men United from 2003, so spoilers for a 21-year-old movie coming your way faster than a mind-controlled Nightcrawler can teleport into the Oval Office. So let's just get into it, because this movie has got a ton of hidden references to some fan-favorite mutants like Deadpool, Gambit, and Omega Red, but more on them later. Releasing in London on April 24th, 2003, and then in the United States a few days later on May 2nd, 2003, X2 X-Men United would rake in a more than satisfactory $407.7 million at the global box office, 3 times more than the movie's budget, which was around $110 to $125 million. And after the first X-Men movie was a huge success for 20th Century Fox, making them $296.3 million, they decided to invest $50 more million than they did the first time around to make sure that audiences really dug the sequel, and that investment paid off for them hardcore for damn sure. The movie opens with the deep and supple British tones of Patrick Stewart as Professor Charles Xavier as he does a monologue about humanity's fearful response to the rise of mutants as the camera flies through outer space. Then the stars and clouds of outer space form themselves into the figure of a bald man with a star in the middle of this bald man's head before the camera zooms into that star and immediately transports the audience inside of the neural connections of a human brain, only for that journey through this human brain to transition into the inner workings of Cerebro. And while yes, this opening credits animation of Cerebro was meant to be clear foreshadowing towards Cerebro being the main threat of this movie, this whole sequence from the moment that Xavier starts talking in space is extremely important not only to the theme of the X-Men in general, but it can also give us a huge possible look into how Kevin Feige will be planning on introducing the mutants into the future MCU, because this outer space zoom in towards this star brain of a spaceman was meant to symbolize how the X-Men are children of the atom, or in other words, the inheritors of the benefits of thousands upon thousands of years of mutation through the means of atomic nuclear radiation that came directly from the Earth's sun. And I know what some of you may be thinking, MT, how could something in a movie from 2003 possibly even connect to the Marvel Cinematic Universe of today? That seems kind of far-fetched, don't you think? And that's a really good question. We shall get into that later, but just remember that Iron Man 1 was not Kevin Feige's first superhero movie rodeo. After serving as an associate producer for the first X-Men film, Kevin Feige also returned with heavy involvement in this movie as well. And the seeds that Kevin Feige may have planted with this opening sequence may have recently begun to flourish in Kevin Feige's more recent Marvel Cinematic Universe films. But for the sake of continuing this breakdown, I will save that for later. As the camera zooms into the mind of this cosmic starman, we are immediately appropriately shown an animation of the inner workings of a brain. As we travel down this brain's spiking neural pathways, the animation cleverly and symbolically transitions from traveling through these organic neural pathways to traveling through the wirings and inner workings of Cerebro, with this opening sequence obviously meant to tease the plot's involvement of using Cerebro as the main threat of mass destruction this time around. And if you didn't already know, X2 X-Men United is actually based off a story called X-Men God Loves, Man Kills, from Marvel Graphic Comic number 5 from 1982. In that comic, William Stryker would do exactly what we see the live-action William Stryker do in the movie and strap a kidnapped Charles Xavier onto a Dollar Tree Cerebro that he recreated in order to use Xavier's amplified brainwaves to wipe mutants off the face of the planet, forcing the X-Men to team up with their arch-enemy Magneto in order to save Charles Xavier and the mutant race. So, starting off the movie with this Cerebro imagery was more than appropriate. But anyways, after this intro animation, the scene immediately transitions to the White House as a tour guide quotes Abraham Lincoln's first inaugural address when she says, "We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection," which was a fantastic way to start off an X-Men movie centered around enemies turned allies against a common threat to mutant kind. But what's even cooler about this moment is that the tour guide who opens the movie with this quote is actually an X-Man herself, as actress Chiara Zani had previously voiced Jubilee in the beloved X-Men Evolution cartoon from the year 2000. But Chiara isn't the only X-Men Evolution alum in this movie, as Professor X voice actor Dave K from X-Men Evolution would make a quick cameo as a TV announcer a little bit later on. But anyways, shortly after this, a brainwashed Nightcrawler comes onto the scene, making his first appearance in the movie with his head down, just like this portrait of JFK does right next to him, a clear allusion to the own presidential assassination that Nightcrawler was about to undergo for the benefit of the mad scientist William Stryker. Nightcrawler is spotted by White House security as he walks in front of a painting of the 1898 armistice between the United States and Spain that ended the Spanish-American War, before Dies Irae by Mozart plays in the background as Nightcrawler kicks all sorts of Secret Service scrotum on his way to the Oval Office like the blue Christian demon that he is. Nightcrawler actor Alan Cumming actually has the same exact birthday as Mozart, so that's kind of a crazy coincidence that they did that. In another universe though, Nightcrawler is probably played by actor Neil Patrick Harris, as Harris auditioned for the role of Nightcrawler alongside Cumming, but ultimately did not get the role, of course. Actor Ethan Embry was also reportedly considered for the role as well, but due to Alan Cumming already being a German-speaking man, he was kind of hard to beat. But anyways, as Nightcrawler engages in one of the most badass scenes in comic book movie history, notice how this mind-controlled mutant doesn't kill any Secret Service members. I mean, I'm sure the production didn't want to introduce an eventual hero by making him a mass murderer from the rip, but this might also hint at these mind-controlled mutants having at least a little bit more control over their actions than they thought, as Nightcrawler himself never actually wants to kill anyone. So either Nightcrawler not aiming to kill anyone but the president is a result of Nightcrawler's latent will, or William Stryker specifically ordered Nightcrawler to only kill President McKenna in order to minimize casualties. But regardless, Nightcrawler is of course shot by one of the Secret Service members, causing Nightcrawler to immediately drop his Mutant Freedom Now knife on the president's expensive desk and teleport away, as the shock of being shot breaks his mind control. But then the scene transitions to our old buddy Wolverine taking a nice casual stroll to the Alkali Lake Industrial Complex, where he's like, "Hey yo, what the hell, man? That psychic Baldy said the answers to all of my forgotten trauma that I want to remember for some reason would be here at Alkali Lake at the end of the last movie. But there ain't shit here but this stupid white wolf. A wolf that is obviously a metaphor for me being a lone wolf, even though I am not a wolf at all. I'm a goddamn Wolverine. I went all the way to Alberta, Canada for nothing. But little did that hairy-ass Logan know that Stryker's secret laboratory was hiding underground the entire time. Ooh. But anyways, to make sure that we understood that lone wolf metaphor from before, the movie transitions to the following scene by having Logan's face fade into the growling face of a fake white wolf at a museum, where Halle Berry Storm gives her class a lesson in how mankind evolved from Neanderthals. In attendance at this field trip is a mutant boy who flicks his freaky-ass forked tongue at some rude bitch eating ice cream. This boy's name is actually Artie Maddox, and this live-action adaptation looks drastically different than he does in the comics. Like, significantly different here, because comic book Artie Maddox, who made his first appearance in 1985's X Factor #2, got his ass a gross big-ass purple head when he mutated at the age of 11. As a completely mute mutant, Artie Maddox had the ability to project thoughts as visual images for everyone to see, either his own thoughts or the thoughts of people outside of himself, and could even do so on a massive scale if needed. But this time around, it seems like they decided to leave the mind projection stuff to the movie's main threat, Jason Stryker, or as Jason's loving father William calls him, Mutant 143. But anyways, directly after this, another student stares into the mouth of a saber-toothed cat skeleton, which to me feels like a clear nod to the X-Men villain Sabretooth, who is completely absent this time around in this sequel, mostly due to the production feeling like this movie already had too many mutant characters to juggle as it was. But there were originally plans to make Sabretooth Stryker's bodyguard at one point before they ultimately decided to go with Lady Deathstrike. But it's still very nice to see Sabretooth's people get represented in this movie despite his absence. Sabretooth's favorite annoying bestie Toad is also nowhere to be seen in this movie as well, but that's mostly because Toad actor Ray Park was too booked and busy to reprise his role as Magneto's favorite hostile hopping assassin. The production actually had plans to have Toad and Nightcrawler fight one-on-one before they realized that Ray Park would not be available, which is a huge bummer because Toad really was one of the best parts of the first X-Men movie. movie. But anyways, a little bit after this, we catch up with both Jean Grey and Scott Summers, with Jean Grey trying to hide that something is clearly wrong with her after the Phoenix Force within her starts to cause her to accidentally read everyone's minds, while also triggering some museum televisions nearby to glitch out like crazy. And I really enjoyed this particular detail of all the technology glitching out because it definitely makes the Phoenix Force feel like it's as hot and powerful as a star capable of causing technology disrupting solar flares, much like our own sun is known to do from time to time. This feels super appropriate to me considering that the Phoenix Force is actually responsible for the creation of all of the stars and all of the life in the universe itself. But anyways, when Jean is having her mind control overload at the museum, Jean also manages to tap into events happening far away from her, both spatially and in the near future. Like for example, you can hear a man yell to the shelter, which is actually something that one of the president's bodyguards says during Nightcrawler's attack at the White House. And this is then followed by Wolverine yelling, "No!" and then Rogue saying they're going to kill him, which are both things that wouldn't be said until Stryker's attack on the X-Mansion when Bobby and Rogue go back to prevent Logan from being captured by Stryker. Scott then tells Jean that he's noticed that ever since Magneto activated his weird mutating doomsday machine at the Statue of Liberty a few months back at the end of the first X-Men movie, all of her powers have been acting really strangely, completely unaware that her powers were being increased by the infinite cosmic power of the primordial Phoenix Force within her. Then the scene transitions to Iceman, Rogue, and Pyro being accosted by some human hoodlums looking to smoke their life-ending tobacco cigarettes inside of the museum, when there is clearly a sign a few feet away from them that says smoking is not permitted inside of the museum. But then again, something tells me that neither of these two dudes can read, so, it's not their fault. But anyways, refusing to give any of these hoodlums any of his sweet, sweet shark lighter fire is of course Mr. John Allardyce himself, with Pyro being played by actor Aaron Stanton this time around, replacing X-Men 1 Pyro actor Alexander Burton. Stanton would of course continue the role of Pyro in X-Men The Last Stand, and of course make a cameo inside of the Void in Marvel Studios' Deadpool and Wolverine. But anyways, Pyro's lighter was themed after a shark specifically because X2 director Peter Feil was a big fan of the movie Jaws. And yes, I know that the director of X2's name is not Peter Feil, but that's how I will be referring to him from now on because frankly, that dude is a massive douche. But anyways, after the kids make a big ol' scene at the museum, Professor Xavier uses his big brain powers to stop all the non-mutant museum goers in their tracks. And fun fact about this moment actually, a good chunk of these background actors freezing in place are actually professional mimes who have mastered the art of holding their bodies perfectly still, which I thought was a pretty genius decision for this scene. But anyways, after the X-Men learn of the attack on the president, they cut their field trip short and head back to Xavier's Institute for the Gifted, with the exterior shot of the X-Mansion having been a reused asset from the first movie, as the budget did not allow for any new exterior shots of the X-Mansion to be shot in time. As the X-Men discuss who could possibly be behind the attack on the White House, Cyclops immediately places blame on Magneto, with both Jean and Professor Xavier disagreeing that he could have been behind the attack due to him being stuck inside of a plastic prison, which then causes the group to talk about their arch nemesis. And as they all talk about Magneto, notice how both Jean and Xavier are sitting together at a chess table, with Jean on the side of the black pieces and Xavier on the side of the white pieces. Chess was, of course, Magneto and Xavier's favorite game to play with each other, especially whenever Xavier went to visit Magneto inside plastic Guantanamo Bay. Jean sitting on the side of the darker pieces feels like a bit of foreshadowing for Jean's turn to Magneto's side in the third X-Men movie as Eric's most prized queen piece.
In chess, the pawns go first.
After this, the scene transitions to William Stryker meeting up with President McKenna and Mystique at the Oval Office, with Mystique still being in disguise as Senator Kelly, like the ending of the first X-Men movie teased. And Mystique's been doing her part to combat the Mutant Registration Act in Congress by completely reversing the dead Senator Kelly's position on it. Because if you somehow forgot, Senator Kelly turned into Senator Jelly at the X-Mansion after being exposed to Magneto's flawed mutation radiation machine. And when we first transition to the scene and William Stryker is examining the hole in the president's desk, I love how Stryker is framed to tower over President McKenna, a framing that I found symbolic due to Stryker being the one who ordered Nightcrawler to assassinate McKenna in the first place. And after Stryker convinces a scared President McKenna to invade Xavier's school of mutant children because they all have a secret jet that comes out of their basketball court, a disguised Mystique asks Stryker if he's trying to start a war with the mutant population. To which Stryker says, "Boy, you better shut your Mitch McConnell looking ass up right now. I was fucking shit up in the Vietnam War back when you were guzzling your mama's titty juice at Woodstock. I know more about war than you ever will, you big nerd. Oh, and by the way, you will never be sexy. Never." And then stormed off, only for Senator Kelly to smirk in his secret little way because he was secretly a sexy blue lady the entire time. But she'll never tell. But no, seriously, Stryker saying that is actually super funny because William Stryker actor Brian Cox is really not that much older than Senator Kelly actor Bruce Davison. In fact, Brian Cox is only 27 days older than Bruce Davison, so unless Senator Kelly was sucking on his mother's titty as a grown-ass man, this doesn't really make too much sense. But then again, you kind of have to give it to Bruce Davison for looking pretty damn young for his age. But anyways, as Stryker walks away, Kelly's eyes glow yellow, so the audience knows that he's actually just Mystique in disguise. But speaking of Mystique's piercing yellow eyes, the production decided to completely computer generate Mystique's eyes this time around, whereas in the first X-Men movie, Mystique actress Rebecca Romijn was forced to wear these incredibly irritating contact lenses that removed 90% of her vision, forcing Rebecca to only be able to wear those contacts for like an hour tops before she had to take a break. But a bigger budget this time around means more comforts for returning actors, so Mystique actress Rebecca Romijn definitely lucked out this time around. But anyways, moving on, the scene transitions to Rogue and Bobby flirting with each other before being tempted to kiss. Behind them, Colossus teases the couple's forbidden touch of their relationship by drawing Bobby getting fried by Rogue for the kid that he appears to be tutoring. And while X2 might be the first X-Men film where Colossus plays a more prominent role, Colossus can actually be seen in the first X-Men movie sketching a different drawing in the courtyard of the school, played by actor Donald McKinnon. But for this movie, X-Men The Last Stand, and X-Men Days of Future Past, Daniel Cudmore would play the role. But anyways, shortly after this, Wolverine returns to the X-Mansion and discovers Rogue and Bobby are indeed in a relationship, with Bobby being a little jealous of Logan when he sees how excited Rogue is for him to be back. After Logan has his awkward interaction with the soon-to-be-drowned Jean Grey, Logan jokes at Cyclops asking him if he's going to welcome Logan back home, which I thought was pretty significant because I think this was the first time Logan would refer to Xavier's Institute as his proper home. But anyways, after this, we transition to Magneto chilling in his plastic cell, reading the 1958 banger, The Once and Future King by T.H. White. And it's a book that is also the favorite of his former best friend Charles Xavier, who at the very end of this movie would end up giving his students a lesson on that very same book, subtly showing the type of things Eric and Xavier used to bond over before they started big time beefing with each other. William Stryker and security guard Mitchell Lorio then enter the cell and start hitting Magneto with that big time elder abuse before dropping some of Stryker's magic liquid on the back of Magneto's neck in order for Magneto to tell him everything that he knew about Xavier's Cerebro machine, because Magneto did help Xavier build Cerebro after all. And after this, we cut to Logan reuniting with Xavier inside of the real Cerebro, where all of the humans of the world are indicated by white lights on the world map and all the mutants with red lights, with the decision to use red lights likely tied to the fact that mutation happens within red human blood. And using Cerebro, Xavier is able to track Nightcrawler's location to Boston, Massachusetts before sending Storm and Jean to go try to pick him up. Then the scene transitions back to Washington, D.C. when we get this shot of the Capitol building eclipsing the sun, which is incredible symbolism in my opinion, considering what I said regarding the very beginning of the movie with that Starman in outer space. If the atomic radiation from stars in the sun is actually linked to human mutation, then the Capitol building eclipsing the sun in this shot makes me feel like this is supposed to be symbolic of the American government attempting to eclipse mutant kind, which is appropriate as hell considering that the scene that this shot introduces is all about Mystique disguising herself as Stryker's assistant Yuriko Oyama in order to discover Stryker's plans to destroy the mutant race, with Yuriko Oyama of course being more commonly known as Lady Deathstrike in the the comics. As Mystique accesses Stryker's computers, we can see the logo for William Stryker's Department of Domestic Security and Defense before we get an absolute motherload of Easter eggs within the files on Stryker's computer. Like, this dude literally had tabs on literally every mutant under the sun. We've got John Allardyce, Amara Aquila, Allison Blair, Sally Blevins, Elizabeth Braddock, Maria Calisantos, Sean Cassidy, Tom Cassidy, Lila Cheney, Victor Creed, Roberto DaCosta, Lauren Dane, Bobby Drake, Fred Dukes, Angelo Espinosa, Kyle Gibney, Paige Guthrie, Samuel Guthrie, Keniucho Harada, Garrison Kane, Remy LeBeau, Eric M. Lensher, Artie Maddox, Jamie Madrox, Sheehan Koyman, Wanda Maximoff, Pietro Maximoff, Kevin McTaggart, Daniel Moonstar, and Aurora Monroe. Then, when Mystique accesses all of the employee files for the guards at Magneto's prison, we can see executive producer Tom DeSanto, producer Lauren Donner, screenwriter Michael Dougherty, fellow screenwriter Dan Harris, and director Peter File are all in this database. And then, a little bit after this, Mystique looks over some of Stryker's folders, which include references like Omega Red, Project Wide Awake, Muir Island, the most powerful mutant of all time, Franklin Richards, Cerebro, John Allardyce again, Ruth Bat Senf, Cecilia Reyes, Everett Thomas, Victor Creed, Nicola St. Croix, Claudette St. Croix, Kurt Wagner, Raven Darkholm, Jamie Madrox, Lila Cheney, Vanessa Carlyle, Wade Wilson, Scott Summers, Doug Ramsey, Allison Blair, Maria Calisantos, Andrea Von Strucker, Andreas Von Strucker, Remy LeBeau, Bobby Drake, Paige Guthrie, Eureka Oyama, Lady Deathstrike, Ohm Cassidy, Artie Maddox, Eric M. Lensher, David North, Tabitha Smith, Galvin Rankin, Dr. Nathaniel Essex, aka Mr. Sinister, Garrison Kane, Mortimer Toynbee, Ileana Rasputin, Teresa Rourke, Sally Blevins, Angelo Espinosa, Guido Carosella, Aurora Monroe Storm, Keniucho Harada, Catherine Kitty Pride, Dr. Carl Lycos, Omega Red, Xavier School, Blackbird, Massachusetts Academy, Trask, Grey Malkin, Zero Tolerance, which is a reference to Operation Zero Tolerance, of course, Project Wide Awake, Beta Flight, Jamie Braddock, Dr. Henry McCoy, The Danger Room, The X-Men Mutant Forge, Department H, The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, Weapon X, Gamma Flight, Ron Sinclair, Legacy, Salem Center, Franklin Richards again, Alpha Flight, Muir Island, Morlocks, and Kevin McTaggart. But anyways, after Mystique discovers the existence of Stryker's Cerebro 2, aka Dark Cerebro, and prints out the schematics to Stryker's secret base, Mystique turns into the janitor that she saw on her way to the computers earlier and then skedaddles. But not before the real Eureka asks the secretly sexy janitor what he's doing inside of the room. And while this moment may seem insignificant, it most certainly was not for Lady Deathstrike actress Kelly Hu, as that line to the janitor is literally the only line that Eureka gets to say over the course of this entire movie, which is kind of wild. But anyways, the scene then transitions to this abandoned church in Boston, Massachusetts, where Nightcrawler is hiding out at. Outside of the church, you can see some graffiti that says, "Nature laughs last," which is a thematic nod to the X-Men universe's overall theme of natural evolution always winning out in the end. After Storm and Jean subdued a scared Nightcrawler, we then get a shot of this poster from Nightcrawler's days performing at the Berlin Circus as the Amazing Nightcrawler. And a little later, when Scott and Xavier go to visit Magneto in his plastic prison cell, Xavier is wheeled by none other than director Peter File himself before Xavier is passed off to Mitchell Lorio. When Xavier and Magneto meet up again for the first time in this movie, Magneto brings up Xavier's past academic history with William Stryker's son Jason, a son that William Stryker wanted Xavier to try to cure of his mutant affliction. When Stryker realized that Xavier was just some pro-mutant hippie, he yanked Jason out of Xavier's school, causing Jason to lash out and torture his parents with his illusion powers. So much so that Jason's own mother would power drill her own skull just to make Jason's illusion stop. And the day that she did that was the day that Stryker's entire family died in his eyes, as William would refuse to acknowledge Jason as his real son, but merely Mutant 143. And since he only saw Jason as a tool, William would essentially start milking Jason for his spinal fluid, which is what William would use to make his mutant mind control juice for this movie. Real messed up family, man. But William Stryker is just a messed up dude. And because of that, not only does he knock Xavier and Scott unconscious in order to use them for his goals later on, but he also initiates his attack on Xavier's school at the same exact time, with one of his men tranquilizing the kid mutant named Jones first, which is hilarious considering that Jones would tell Wolverine earlier that he literally never sleeps. So, I hope that boy enjoyed his first ever post-puberty nap. And as the invading army goes from room to room tranquilizing children like the big man that they are, they run into Kitty Pryde's bedroom, where she is played by actress Katie Stewart this time around, filling in for actress Sumela Kay from the first movie. And a little later, the young mutant Siren screeches at the sight of Stryker's army, with Siren being played by actress Shauna Kane. But what's actually a bit disappointing though is that there were originally plans to introduce the Sentinels to the X-Men universe as part of Stryker's Goon Squad in this movie, but that idea didn't really get past the concept art phase. But I gotta say, the concept art does look pretty damn sick, not even gonna lie. But as the X-Men are making their escape, Wolverine finally comes face to face with William Stryker, the man that has been haunting his memories. But before he can get answers from Stryker, Iceman creates a massive wall of ice between them. A wall of ice that was actually a big-ass wall of real ice that weighed a whopping 1.75 tons. And while making their escape, the group hop into Cyclops' blue 2004 Mazda RX-8 and then head to Boston, Massachusetts, while Stryker gets his grubby old man hands on Cerebro. And a little later, before Mystique shoves a bunch of iron right up that security guard's Tony Stank, two iconic X-Men characters can be seen debating on the TV at the bar, with one of these gentlemen being Dr. Hank McCoy, aka Beast of the X-Men, played here by actor Steve Bacek before being replaced by Kelsey Grammer in X-Men The Last Stand, X-Men Days of Future Past, and The Marvels, and then Nicholas Hoult in the First Class timeline. But the other iconic mutant that Hank is actually debating, while he can't really be seen in the shot, is actually the mutant Sebastian Shaw, a character that we wouldn't really see in live action until X-Men First Class, and this was actually revealed in the X2 novelization, with the novelization also revealing that we were actually supposed to see the origins of Beast's blue fur transformation at one point in this movie, specifically triggered by the activation of Dark Cerebro on all mutant kind. In the novelization, Hank McCoy's Dark Cerebro headache causes him to freak the hell out on TV and transform into his blue beastly form. But that idea was cut out from the actual movie, which is kind of a bummer. But anyways, Bobby then brings the X-Gang to the Drake family household in Boston, Massachusetts, a family full of intolerant dumbasses. And before his family knows that he's there, Bobby brings Rogue up to his bedroom, where we can see that Iceman was a big fan of snowboarding even before his mutation, with a poster for the famous snowboarder Sluggo Boyce even visible in the background as Rogue changes. And a little later, when Wolverine whips out his claws after being scared by the intimidating Drake family cat, the production actually got that cat to lick Wolverine's claws by applying a little bit of some tasty frozen tea on the tips of the claws. And when the Drake family actually gets home, Bobby's stupid-ass traitor of a little brother can be seen wearing a shirt with a phoenix-looking bird on it, a possible nod to the cosmic phoenix influence in this movie and in the next movie. But unfortunately for the X-Men, Bobby's stupid-ass traitor of a little brother would call the police on Bobby because Bobby had a hot new girlfriend and superpowers, and his brother had no bitches and no superpowers, so he just had to hate. But after Pyro goes all junior supervillain on the police, Storm and Jean pick the X-Men up in the X-Jet before nearly being shot down by other non-X-Jet jets in the sky. But luckily Magneto was nearby to keep the X-Men from wrecking their multi-million-dollar Blackbird. And after Magneto tells the X-Men of Stryker's plans for Cerebro that Mystique found while doing her hacker thing, the X-Men form an uneasy alliance with Magneto like they do in the comics. And later that night, Mystique then tries to get her bones injected with some late-night adamantium. And when she does, we get to see that scar that Wolverine left on her body after the two fought at the Statue of Liberty Museum in the first film. And a few moments later, another reference to the first X-Men film happens when that messy bitch Magneto mocks Rogue by telling her that he likes what she's done with her hair, when it was indeed he who was responsible for her white streak in her hair by strapping Rogue up to his doomsday machine like some sort of jerk. But anyways, later, when Stryker's men mistakenly capture a Mystique disguised as Wolverine, it was Mystique's addiction to always doing a sexy-ass smirk that caused Stryker to immediately see right through her disguise. Then, after Mystique lets the X-Men and Magneto into the facility, Wolverine then goes after William Stryker, but ends up going toe-to-toe with Lady Deathstrike herself, another mutant member of Stryker's Weapon X project with deadly adamantium claws. In the comics, Lady Deathstrike is actually a cybernetic being with an adamantium skeleton, but it appears that in this universe, Lady Deathstrike is just a mutant extremely similar to Wolverine in terms of a healing factor and having retractable bones. Actress Kelly Hugh actually had to grow her fingernails out super long in order for the production to glue her character's sharp claws onto the bottom of those fingertips. But anyways, later, when Magneto stops a mind-controlled Xavier from wiping out the human race, instead of just rescuing Xavier like he does in the comics, that messy bitch Magneto instead reverses the panels on Cerebro before telling Mystique to trick Jason Stryker into having Xavier use Cerebro to kill all the non-mutants on the planet, therefore making a planet perfectly suited for mutants, which feels like a plan extremely similar to that of Deacon Frost in the first Blade movie when he was trying to use Lamagra to get rid of all the humans on the planet. Then messy Magneto and Mystique then leave the facility, brutally chain William Stryker up, steal a helicopter, and then recruit Pyro to Magneto's Brotherhood of Mutants, making this an all-around great day for Magneto. Well, except for the part when Nightcrawler would use his faith to teleport Storm into Dark Cerebro so that Storm can make Jason Stryker just cold enough to free Xavier from Jason's clutches. And as Jason feels his control over Xavier weakening, Jason's true inner child self starts to be upset about possibly disappointing his father, showing the audience that Jason never really fully mentally aged out of being a traumatized child, which is super sad, especially when none of the X-Men really made an effort to save Jason's life as the facility started to crumble around him as a result of Cyclops' blast during his fight with Jean. Kinda messed up, but then again, I understand, this dude almost tried to kill everybody, so screw that guy. But anyways, when the X-Men make their escape from the facility, Wolverine then uses his recalled memories to lead them out of the same exit that he used when he escaped the Weapon X facility for the first time in his visions. And after throwing his old dog tags in front of a chained up and doomed William Stryker about to drown from the cracking dam, the group head into a malfunctioning X-Jet, leading Jean Grey to make the impossible decision to sacrifice herself in order to save her loved ones, activating her Phoenix powers to lift and power up the Blackbird while simultaneously splitting the waters of the cracked dam like Moses did with the Red Sea in the Bible. And finally, at the end of the movie, before Colossus, Jones, Artie Maddox, and Jubilee all attend Xavier's English class, Wolverine, Cyclops, and Xavier discuss Jean Grey's sacrifice. And if you look at Wolverine's hair in this scene, you might notice that it looks a tad more elevated than it usually does. This is because Hugh Jackman was also shooting the 2004 vampire movie Van Helsing, a movie that required Jackman to grow his hair out super long. And of course the movie ends with a camera pan over Alkali Lake where the image of a phoenix can be seen glowing underneath, a nod to when Jean Grey was left at the bottom of Jamaica Bay right when she became the Phoenix in the comics. But anyways, that is it for this breakdown of X2 X-Men United. But before I go, I do want to circle back on how X2's cosmic opening could potentially tease the future of the MCU, because I really do feel like Kevin Feige may have started to reference the evolving power of stars within one of his more recent projects, specifically the 2021 Eternals movie, a movie that starts off with the Eternals waking up right in front of the Earth's sun after their bodies are infused with the very same yellow solar energy that sun had to offer. I believe that this evolving yellow solar energy is the same yellow energy associated with the Mind Stone. And much like the Mind Stone would force Wanda Maximoff's mutant powers to manifest in WandaVision, the yellow solar energy of Earth's sun appears to promote superpower evolution within the bodies of organic beings like humans and deviants. And the best example of this is when the deviant Crow slurps up the yellow solar mind energy out of the bodies of both Ajak and Gilgamesh, because each time Crow exposes himself to a shit ton of these energies, we can see Crow's body literally evolve in front of our very eyes. And not only this, but the solar mind energies from the sun also allow the Eternals to form the Unimind and communicate with the celestial Tiamat. So there definitely seems to be a solid link between solar energy and the power of the mind, in my opinion, and the opening of X2 using a star as the mind kind of a cosmic mutant man definitely makes me feel like Kevin Feige took major inspiration from that early seed he planted in X2 in order to prepare for the coming of mutants in his current MCU, because nuclear solar power seems to be the key to evolution, and humanity has been mutating under this sun for thousands upon thousands of years. So definitely do not sleep on the sun's influence on the MCU, because I have a strong feeling the sun is going to play a major role into how mutants will begin to form in the MCU. But anyways, I digress. Thank you guys so much for watching this breakdown of X2 X-Men United. You guys can follow me at Mastertainment on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or wherever I am on the internet, but most importantly, follow Heavy Spoilers here on YouTube, and when you do, make sure you hit that notification bell to get notifications every time we upload a video. But yes, you guys are amazing and awesome for watching this video. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.